Wade and Teresa King, so honored to sit here with you guys. I am just, every day I pray for you guys, what you're going through, and I'm thankful for the backbone that God has given you to walk through this. My hope with this is that we can do a fairly quick overview so that people can get a general idea without a lot of the acronyms that most people don't know what's happened to you guys. So let me try to summarize what I know and what's kind of got me fired up.
Okay.
2021, the state comes after you saying that you have manipulated land that your family has leased for 70 years and you're raising cattle on that land, and they're saying that stock ponds that you have created legally and that you maintain legally, they claim that it's wetlands. And they eventually they end up basically canceling your lease on that land, meaning you have to remove all your animals from it. You can no longer use it. You have your own land, so you move your animals to that, and then you have to find alternate ways to feed them. And then they come after you and send you fines saying that you hurt the land by driving equipment on it, and this kind of thing. $260,000 in fines that are hanging out there. You end up in court. You have to hire attorneys. You've been to court many times. I've been to court with you guys. And then recently it comes out that the original complaint was actually from a member of the Colville tribe. And now, as it turns out, it looks like the plan all along for the last 5 years was to somehow take land that your family has used, and maybe even land that you own, and essentially deed that back to the Colville tribe. Or should I say back? Deed it to the Colville tribe as if it's, they have some right to it. And there's all this land transfer stuff going on, and, craziness with that, sort of some winking and, because the land can't be transferred unless it has revenue, and if you're leasing it, then it has revenue, and so they have to cancel your lease and then say that it doesn't have revenue in order for them to be able to do the land transfer. And so is that a broad brush?
Yes, it is.
Okay. So I want to talk, before we end, I want to talk about like what the impact is and why the general population in Washington state and beyond ought to be concerned about this. But for now, let's focus on what does life look like on your ranch, and how has this impacted you, and what has it cost you? Because I know you have, I think, $1 million worth of fencing that you've put into this land that you're not getting compensated for, and I know you've had to sell off some cattle. So where are you at today?
Where we're at today is that we just filed our reply today, actually, to get the motion to vacate the preliminary injunction so we could basically go back onto the DNR lands so we can complete our lease term to 2029. That's our initial goal, and that hearing's coming up next Tuesday, the 5th of May.
And what are the chances of that getting granted?
Good. They're good because...
Really?
Yes, because basically a preliminary injunction, when the preliminary injunction was granted back in 2 years ago, we were under criminal investigation, and we were instructed by our attorneys, do not talk, we can't offer any evidence, we can't give any testimony, can't give a declaration. That was all what my attorneys told me to do at the time. So the judge just looked at it like, well, if the state's giving all the evidence, you guys aren't giving any evidence, I'm going to have to go with the side that's giving me the evidence.
Right.
So now we're able to give the evidence. I'm able to give testimony. We're able to give our cultural or archaeologist report, all those things we couldn't give before. So the evidence is completely shifted, completely changed.
Okay, so there's two directions I want to go with that. One of them is I want to talk about the criminality of this and the fact that you guys are being considered criminals. I find that very interesting. I want to go back to the Constitution and talk about that. But I guess the other side of it is, what happens if this does get granted, you are able to get back on the land? What's the likelihood of them renewing your lease in 2029?
I would say about zero.
Yeah, that's what I would think too. So either way, the writing is on the wall, even if you get this. Now let's go back to the criminality. You're familiar with the Constitution, 27 amendments. The first 10 amendments were the Bill of Rights. It's very interesting when you read those. about half of the Bill of Rights have to do with the treatment of prisoners. Why would our framers do that? Unless they knew that a tyrannical government would always use lawfare to try to imprison innocent people to get what they want, which is exactly what's happening to you.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons why everybody watching this video ought to be concerned about this in the United States of America today.
It's a shock to me that all we have to do, all an agency has to do is basically get you, if you think you have the rights to your private property, all an agency has to do is basically give you an order, and that gets you into the administrative process. And once you're in the administrative process, the court says you got to let the agency onto your private property,
right,
to do discovery.
Right. An agency.
An agency.
Of what?
A bureaucrat.
Right. And you would think, now I actually talked to your attorney about this a few months ago, and you're familiar with Chevron deference?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Because
Right.
I think the overturning of that has a definite impact on the power that all of these agencies have within our country to do these sorts of things. They've basically, in a way, they've been allowed to become almost like lawmaking bodies because their penalties are punitive.
Yes.
Right? You're
Yes.
looking at a bill for $200,000 and
Yes.
for fines when there's no evidence that you broke the law.
No.
You know, that's
No.
not right. And that falls right into what Chevron deference, that arena
It puts
is.
puts us on the defensive. We have to prove our innocence.
Yeah. And the other thing that bothers me about this lawfare is you are forced to fight against a state that has unlimited resources.
Yes.
Hundreds of attorneys if they need them. Every resource at their disposal until you either go bankrupt or give up.
Yep.
And that is not right. If our framers could see what's happening in our judicial system, now let's say we've been complaining and we've had polling about our executive branch forever. And there's always a poll like, how is the president doing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Same thing with Congress, with the legislative branch. We've always had like, well, how much do people like Congress these days, right? But since when, until the last few years, have we had that same feeling about our judicial branch and the lawfare that's going on within there? It's just not right. I was in court with you just a few weeks ago, and a judge refused to grant you your Seventh Amendment rights to a jury trial.
So my attorney basically said something to me, and I was curious about it at the time. Basically said that, well, at the Superior Court level, they're restricted and they can only basically look at the laws that are in front of them.
Mm-hmm.
So I went back home and we looked up RCWs as far as what does the oath read that the judges take when they become a judge.
Right.
Jared, it's to uphold the Constitution of the U.S. and the state Constitution.
Both.
Doesn't say anything about laws.
Yeah, and last I checked, the Seventh Amendment was part of that.
The
right?
Constitutions.
Yeah, even though, and that's the thing, this was news to me. I actually talked to Oliver about this because I didn't realize that there was a gap in our Seventh Amendment rights here in Washington State.
Right.
You know, because of state precedents or whatever. There's another thing that I found very interesting, and I guarantee nobody's ever asked you guys this, but I was listening to a news story about you guys the other day, and somebody was reading the complaint, and Teresa wasn't on it. It was all Mr. Wade King did this, Mr. Wade King did, and it was like, I was thinking to myself, okay, these leftist crazies can't figure out what a woman is. But yet, when they want to sue you and kick you off your land, they know they got to, you know, they just put Wade's name on it, right? And it's just, I was like, that's kind of interesting. You know?
Well, that's one of the comments. I probably shouldn't say it here, but I'm going to say it anyway. As far as here, these experts come out from ecology and are going to determine what is and isn't a wetland. But those same people can't tell you the difference between a man and a woman.
Yeah, exactly. And tell me what the experts said, the actual experts, when they walked across your land and they were saying,
these are not wetlands.
Yeah.
These are not wetlands.
Because they said, shouldn't there be water if this is wetlands?
Yeah, shouldn't a wetland be wet?
Another thing is the RCW, and I know we've looked this up before, but inside there, it specifically grants ranchers the ability to build and maintain stock ponds, right? Does it not?
Yes.
Specifically, not like anecdotally or like maybe, but actually specifically.
The Clean Water Act is more specific that way, the Federal Clean Water Act. But the state basically, through the 9044-050 in groundwater, we have permit exempt stock water rights. And there's been the Easter Day case and then the Campbell and Gwen case. Both of those support that decision. They say whatever is unlimited, and whatever is available to withdraw the water.
Yeah.
And the other thing, an interesting thing in 9044-050 is by other works constructed. Those are the words in the statute. Other works constructed. You can drill a well, dig a well, or other work constructed to withdraw groundwater.
Yeah.
And cows can withdraw groundwater.
But according to those same brainiacs who can't figure out what a woman is, evidently you have to do it with your hands or a shovel or something. You can't take a piece of equipment out there to do it.
But Jared, this is all new, and I just talked to my attorney about that this morning. It's this very same case. As far as, can you give me any examples of any ecology actions or violations in the past, in the past 10 or 15 years, on these isolated water holes like this? We can't find any.
Yeah, it's incredible, isn't it? And I had an experience, and I know you guys have as well with yours, on my property. As we were working on a subdivision project, we had to bring in what's known as the DAHP. And what is that? Archaeology and Historical Preservation.
Department of Archaeology and Historical Preservation.
Yeah, what an absolute conflict of interest. This is what we were told. We did this, and I'm sure this, and I know you guys have had some issues on your property with this. They said, well, you have to pay these people to come in, and they scour your whole property, and they dig little holes, and they do all this stuff. And then if they find something, then not only can you not build within 100 feet of that, but then you have to pay them to come back so that they can be there to watch your construction project the entire time. What a joke. You know what my response to that is? It's my property. If you guys wanted to get your arrowheads off of it, you should have done that back when you owned it, or back before I owned it, because now it's mine. So
I agree.
Stay off of my property.
I agree.
You know, I personally want to see us get the government completely off of our property. I don't think, if you own, and this is actually the truth, and this is in the Constitution, the government has no right to require us to pull a permit to build a structure on our property. It's our property.
Right.
You know, now I think the building codes are good, and I think we ought to follow them, but it doesn't mean that we should have to get permission from the government to be able to do something on land that we own.
Right.
You know, we're old enough. We worked our whole lives to be able to buy a piece of the rock. For what? For us to be able to pay rent every year to the government, and then to ask Mama may I every time we want to do something? You know, well, I want to put up a pergola and have a little picnic bench so we can have lunch. Can I do that? You know, there's a thing down in Klickitat County, just pure lunacy. They call it the Scenic Gorge Act. And if you, as I understand it, if you're on a boat out in the Columbia, down in the gorge area, this is between Washington and Oregon, and you look up and you can see something, then it falls under the jurisdiction of a board of governors, and they can tell you whether or not you can cut that tree or paint your house or build something or do it. And it's like,
too much. It's too much.
It's too much.
It's too much.
You know, the arms of government have gotten way too long.
Yes.
So website is saveKingRanch.com for people to donate. Okay, there's a couple things before we go ahead.
It's just, there's a lot of information, a lot of posting, a lot of the videos like this and other media outlets and things like that. There's all kinds of articles on that as well.
Yeah, there was two concerns that I had, and I'm trying to remember what they are. The one concern I have is, and follow me if I'm saying this correctly, the land that you are leasing primarily is actually an asset for an entity that provides funding for our school system.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
So if they are successful in transferring this land to the tribes, that revenue, that income would no longer be to our school system. Now, I know that the laws say that they're supposed to replace that land, but we also know, and I think it was Charlie, what's Charlie's channel's name?
Yanessa
TV. Yeah, he's done some great shows on this. I believe he just said that there's like 70,000 acres that have been transferred where they didn't replace the land with other land revenue source. And so, my point with that is, our school systems will lose that funding, which means all the taxpayers are going to have to make up for it, right?
Yes.
So that's one pathway that I think it's going to cost the taxpayers. Obviously, anybody that owns land of any significance or leases land from the government is going to potentially be underneath this, this threat. But what other ways is this going to cost the citizens?
Well,
with
what
the
we
government
contribute,
operating like
what
this?
we contribute to the local economy. That's the biggest thing we see. We did the calculations as far as average daily consumption or average yearly consumption for the U.S. citizens, and we calculate out we feed 7,600 people for a year. Well, if we cut our numbers back to half, that's going to have an effect. And then all the revenue stream from all those cattle and all from the feed stores to the implement dealerships, the fuel suppliers, everything we buy, we supply or help the local economy out. It's going to be cut in half. That's the
Right.
initial offset. Then basically the whole tax base, what's our value of our land worth then?
Yeah, exactly.
They're going to devalue our land. And then what about, besides we pay a leasehold excise tax, we pay into the weed board tax, we pay all those different taxes that DNR wants us to pay. They're not going to be getting paid anymore.
Yeah, and I'm not sure what the tax structure is of the DNR land, but I know that tribal land doesn't have to pay property taxes, and so that could decrease the tax base for both Douglas and Grant County.
Yes.
In terms of the revenue there, so that's even more money that it's going to cost the taxpayers. So this is a huge threat. I don't see why our federal government needs to have to own land. I personally think it should be responsibilities of the states. I think we ought to go back to the Public Lands Act that has the multi-use project that allows you to use the land for recreation or for grazing or for mining or for different
Multiple
things.
use.
Yeah, multiple use.
Yeah.
No reason that we can't do that,
Right.
and simultaneously. And that is what we have to do. We need these public lands to be available to the citizens, and we have to have a sensible use of them. And I just don't. It doesn't settle well with me that we as a country would be deeding land to tribal groups that, in many cases, those tribes didn't even exist for a period of years. And then this is our land, and now we're going to exist. And then, FEMA's sending them money for disaster restoration, and, they're getting grants and they're doing all this stuff. It's like, why not just integrate? I don't understand why we're doing this.
Well, yeah. Well, they know why they're doing this. Yeah.
Because the tribes are protected, and
Then we're funding it. They're basically said in the application there, who's going to fund the management of these lands going into the future, and they list the BIA. Well, you and I are the taxpayers.
so we pay for that.
We pay for that.
So we give them the land, and then we pay to manage it.
Yep.
Oh boy, what a deal!
Of the land that we bought from them.
Yeah,
We bought this land from them in 1855.
yeah, and it's interesting. I mean, a lot of people don't know because they haven't read the history, but there's a lot of conflict between the tribes, especially in the Northwest. The Northwest was a brutal back in the day when it was basically being occupied by the United States, and there was a lot of bloodshed on both sides. And eventually, what happened was the United States government sent in the army, basically, and they put a stop to it. And they were in some spots in the Bible, God commands them to go in and, kill everything, kill every man, woman, and child, or whatever. The United States didn't do that. They came in and they did what they needed to do to subdue them from chopping the heads off of the settlers, and constrain them to an area, and then they signed treaties with them to be able to go back and to enjoy their native land, which they were fighting over for generations between each other. And then it turns into this, and it's frustrating.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
So SaveKingRanch.com is where people can donate. This is a big deal. It's only going to get bigger. I do hope that you get access to the lease again, but that's not good enough. Everything you guys have been through the last 5 years, and even the grim outlook of the future. That's not America. That's not the America I grew up in.
No. This land is the highest and best use for this land is grazing and multiple use. It's not to be just left set aside. There are scriptures that basically God gave us this land to use, to grow fruit from, to be fruitful with, not to just let it
take dominion and multiply.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, God bless you guys.
Thank you.
And I am thankful that you guys, are trusting God through this. I've heard you on many interviews, and we've talked many times, so I know that your backbone is strengthened by God, and I appreciate that. So pray for Wade and Teresa King. Thank you guys for watching. Donate to SaveKingRanch.com, and just continue to follow this story. And we have to stop this lawfare within our government. This is not the America that we grew up in. Thank you, and God bless you.
Thank you.